you want to see it again, posted for you in our on our YouTube channel. My apologies for last week's meeting. We had some audio problems, so hopefully you have notes for that, and we're able to get the notes from our last two meetings. Some folks prefer to get it that way, so we'll post this video on our YouTube channel, and we will also summarize it with some of the notes and points. Similar to our last meetings, if you have some burning questions, feel free to put them into the chat box, and we will do our best to answer all of those for you today. As I mentioned, my apologies for our last meeting. We did put the notes out. We also answered one of your questions in the notes. There was some questions about the survey results that went out about our distance learning program in the middle school. If you didn't have a chance to see it, we had a great response rate to that survey. We had 81 people that responded. So nearly half of our middle school families took the opportunity to respond. The results came back that most of the students about 3 to 4 hours a day on their schoolwork. That was the general target range we were kind of looking at, some a little more, some a little less. Most considered that to be just right. And they also shared with us that their child was generally successful with minimal support, and that they reported that it was clear what they needed to do. That being said, we still had a few people on the survey that had some challenges, either too much work or too little, or they weren't sure exactly what to do. So continue reaching out to your child's teachers, but it seems like we're hitting people, which is definitely what our goal was. So hopefully, if there are things about the program that aren't working for your child, let us know, and we will be happy to work with you on that. We do have another survey that we'll be getting out shortly that will go whole school, and that survey is going to talk whole school about what has been going well, should distance learning be required in the future. We'll kind of get into some speculative concerns as far as what the end of this year is likely to look like and what the beginning of next year could look like. But we want to continue to build on our strengths should we have to come back to some environment, and also find out from you if this program is working really well for your child and you want that to be more of a main option than a requirement. So to kind of recap what we talked about last week, the governor had came out with the state's roadmap to recovery, and within that he talked about stage 2 reopenings, which he clumped businesses and schools together in. And there was a little confusion earlier this week because he's talking about stage 2 reopenings, but he's referring to businesses and not schools. So right now, our guidance is that school is likely to remain closed through the end of this school year. But he is making some announcements today at noon, which talks about some possible business reopenings. So we're optimistic on that. The things that he was looking at that are working well is he was looking at the ability of our medical system to address capacity, hospital capacity, making sure that the people who had protective equipment had it. There's a lot of positive things in that direction. The things that we were still looking at is testing and tracing. I met with Dr. Wilma Wooten, who's head of health for the county, along with the other superintendents last week. And she basically summarized it and said that their goals right now, she put it in 3. And she said those 3 T's that they're looking at is testing, tracing, and treatment. So they want to know who has it, who they may have exposed, and then to be able to get a vaccine to help with folks. Obviously, the vaccine stuff is the trailing piece, and that's a big concern. But we're making some progress, like I said, in some of the other areas. I did have a chance to connect earlier today with our city manager in Escondido, and he said it's been a big priority for the city to keep their open spaces open, and that he is looking forward to what the governor has to say about getting businesses reopened. So he had said that most of the parks and trails and those kind of things are open. It has been their goal. They have closed parking lots to congregating, but he is looking forward to continuing to keep those open spaces open. When you look for us here at SPU, we'll continue providing the distance learning program that we have, but we have an eye right now towards what's going to happen in the summer and what's going to happen for next school year. Because believe it or not, we only have 4 weeks left of our scheduled school year. I don't know if that feels long or short to you, but it does seem a little odd to me on the timing. But expect kind of more of the same on the distance learning program. We will continue to provide learning for your children. And like I said, if we're not hitting the mark, let us know, because we want to take advantage of this time to personalize the learning for what your kids need. Similar to how normal school year goes, you'll probably see some of these required restrictions lessen as we get to the last couple weeks of the school year, as teachers kind of compile the grades and get things prepared and all that kind of stuff. And they will try to put a little emphasis on having some fun like kids normally do the last couple of weeks of school year. So you'll see a little bit of change as we kind of get into that. Our last scheduled school day this year is June 4th. I kind of mentioned them putting their grades together. We're still getting some grading questions. I wanted to clarify that with you. Keep in mind that the purpose of our grades is to motivate kids, keep them learning, and to kind of have some idea of how much they're learning, to kind of monitor that growth. It's difficult to do the monitoring in the home environment, more difficult than it is at the school level. But we have adopted a hold harmless policy. And what that'll look like to your kids when the report cards come out is, if you have a kid who's in the elementary school, TK through 5th grade, those report cards will likely be a narrative to talk about what happened in that 3rd trimester. There'll be some effort-based grades, but very limited assessment grades per standard progress. So you're not likely to see a whole lot of numbers tied to that TK through 5 report card, but you will see a description of how that child's been doing, so that both you and the teacher for next year know what worked well and what we still need to work on. 6th through 8th, our middle school is a little bit different. If you have a middle schooler, you know that they continue to receive letter grades. And those letter grades, in most cases, will end up on the report card as their grades. But under that hold harmless policy, if there's some kids that are disadvantaged by this, have struggles with technology, they have struggles with language, disability, equal access, teachers have the option to put in a credit no mark grade. And what that essentially means is that they will move on to their next challenge for next year, and the no mark is not going to be held against them. So we're trying to make sure that we can continue to motivate students, continue to get them connected to their learning, to make your job as the home teaching parent a little bit easier, because there's some accountability to it, but we don't want kids to be harmed in the process. So if your kids are having unique challenges, share it with a teacher. They do have those options for those no mark or credit grades. But know that your 8th grader is not going to be adversely affected by this 3rd trimester as far as their promotion goes. Meaning that we are not going to hold these T3 grades to take kids out of the running for valedictorian or to not promote them because of this. They will have the opportunity to build upon their grades. So if kids were on the fence as to whether they were going to promote, they have the opportunity to get there through this process. But we aren't going to punish them through grading as to promotion goes for our 8th graders. Speaking of those 8th graders, we do have some exciting things in line for promotion. Sadly, it's not looking like we're going to be permitted to do gatherings in about 4 weeks when we were scheduled to have our promotion. If we can't, we've got some things in the works, and if you have an 8th grade student, you'll learn more about them soon. But we'll be hosting a virtual breakfast on June 4th, which is tradition here at San Pasqual Union. Some parents that are working together to put the video together. So we have plans for our virtual breakfast and our video showing, which has been a tradition for all of our 8th graders. That night, June 4th, our scheduled graduation, we'll have a virtual graduation, and we're working with our ASB and some of our film students to put together a personalized promotion ceremony. So each of our 8th graders will be able to share some messages about how San Pasqual has influenced them, what they'll miss, what they remember, what they value the most. And so there will be a little bit more personalization than we've ever had with our promotion ceremonies. Expect some information because we'll need some videos. Expect that to come out by Monday at the latest. We're meeting today to kind of work out all the details. And then the day after graduation, we'll actually deliver your diplomas to your homes. We will personally go out and make sure that your kids get the recognition that they deserve, albeit not in a public setting. We have a donation of some yard signs to celebrate their success. And so we have some fun things in store for them. And hopefully come July or August, we'll be able to all get together and do this right. So our kids have worked really hard as 8th graders. They deserve to be celebrated. And like I said, we've got some fun things in store. The next thing we're kind of looking at is our summer learning. We know that this process has been difficult on kids. Kids may not have learned at the pace that they normally would. We want to provide some opportunities over summer for kids to do that. We don't know what it's going to look like quite yet. There's 2 main issues that we're not aware of yet. First is what's the distancing requirements going to be and what's our funding going to be. So we're looking at the summer program at the bare minimum being something along the lines of offering virtual supports with some staff members to help. Could be more than that depending on what distancing and funding permit. And then if we get some opportunities to get together before school starts, we'd like to get some folks together in whatever we're allowed to do for some normalizing events, because this has been anything but normal. We are still expecting to come back to school on August 19th. That's our scheduled return date. It's Wednesday, August 19th. How that will look, we're not 100% sure yet. We're currently working with kind of 3 scenarios in mind. First and foremost, where we're spending most of our time is the back to normal scenario. If we are permitted to get back to normal, kids can come full time. There aren't the same distancing requirements. That is our preferred plan, and that is our main plan. We're looking at options as well to look at what a 50% capacity and what a no percent capacity would be. And what I mean by that is we have looked at our classrooms, and our classrooms can generally fit about half the kids we normally have in them. So for instance, our elementary classes, which normally run 20, 22 kids, we can fit about 11, 12 kids in there. Our middle school classes, which tend to get closer to 30, we're looking at fitting about half that amount of kids in there. So if we're still under our current social distancing requirements, that's kind of what it would be looking like with some sort of a modified schedule about half the kids at school. Like I said, that is not our preference, not our would not be our choice, but we're looking at what that would look like. We're also looking if they don't allow schools to open at all, and that will be some of that survey information we'll get to you as far as what is it that's working right now that could continue to work, and what are some things that we really need to change if this is the starting point. We know that if they keep this social distancing stuff in line, it's a tremendous challenge for families. And I'm optimistic that the same push that we're starting to see to reopen businesses will be the same push that we continue to see to reopen other things. And so our goal right now, we're taking some steps to order some additional equipment, order some additional things to make sure that our campus can be clean, looking at our procedures to keep kids safe. But our goal is to get them back here in a quote unquote normal school environment, because we know that flex days creates immense challenges for families. And it also creates challenges for schools. You know, we would look at if you have social distancing, how are you busing students, and how are you doing pickup and drop off and breaks and recess and lunch? And our school is not built to have kids apart from one another. Our school is built to bring kids together and to bring families together. So our goal as we come back is to do that in the safest way possible. One question that we had last week that things have changed on, there was a question last week about when kids come back, will masks be required? And my statement was that kids in daycare centers were currently not being required to wear masks. And the governor did issue some new guidance about children 3 and above should be wearing masks when they're out in public. So hopefully that will not be the mandate as we come back to school. But currently there is a mandate for school-age children to be wearing masks. I know that some of these daycare centers require them to wear them until they get in the door and then they take them off. Not too sure the whole logic of the whole thing on that, but hopefully we will not have students that will be required to wear masks when they get to school. The other issue that's kind of on the horizon right now as far as next year is school budgets. We just got a report out that they're predicting a 37% shortfall in the state budget due to the COVID-19 crisis. That equates to $18 billion that would have gone to schools. So we're currently working through our advocacy groups to make sure that schools aren't taking the full brunt of that hit, because not only do we have additional expenses based on what's going on, the budgets were tight before a third of it was cut out. So this could affect how we operate as well. So a lot of unknowns, a lot to consider, but here's the good news. It's 104 days until school is scheduled to start again. And for those of you who have been following this, things change hour by hour, they change day by day. A lot's gonna happen in 104 days. And I'm very optimistic that we are going to be in a much better position in 100 days from now than we are right this minute. We'll continue to create and share contingency plans with you. But like I said, our goal is to get your kids back to school full time in the learning environment where they belong. So before we get to a few questions, I think there's some in the chat right now. Wanted to tell you a few things that are going on. We've got 2 more days left in Teacher Appreciation Week. So we have some fabulous teachers. If you haven't told them that, this is a perfect time to let them know. We have a school board meeting on Tuesday night at 5:30. If you want to see how your leaders are putting your kids first in their decision making, it's a virtual meeting. It'll be posted on our website, 5:30 on Tuesday. Next Wednesday is our last curbside library checkout. So if you have participated in the curbside library program, or if you have wanted to, Wednesday will be your last chance to check books out. After that, we'll start getting them back for the school year. Also next Wednesday at 4:30 is our kindergarten roundup. That is our orientation for anybody that has a TK or K student that's coming into school next year. And we'll give you the rundown of everything that we expect with our kindergarten and TK programs. Let you know how to register. That'll be a little different than we normally do it, obviously. And then next week, we do plan on having another coffee with the principal session. It's likely to be Friday instead of Thursday. There's some other things going on as far as schedule is concerned. Let me go into the chat box real quick and see what we've got in here. There's a question about Apple Tours, and it says that they received a refund of, for the 8th grade trip, minus $350. I thought they were keeping $250. My understanding and my communication with them is they were going to keep $300 from most people. They were going to keep a $250 deposit, and then they were going to keep a $49 fee. So if they kept $350, it sounds like they've kept more than that they said that they were going to. So you might want to follow up with them, because that was not what was communicated with us. There were some errors, or at least one other error, in returning the correct amount of money. So if it looks like it's off, I would follow up with them on that. We see, yep, some follow up with Mr. Harmon and Ms. McGill. That's good. There's a question on the 50% scenario. Would it be a split day with half of the time? How would they clean between shifts? Most likely, and it's still early in the planning session, it would most likely be students coming to school 2, possibly 3 days per week, and then the other kids coming to school 2, possibly 3 days per week, for that very reason. The concern with having multiple kids come through would be that you'd have multiple kids in the classroom and not allow sufficient cleaning. There is a good chance that if we were under some of these restrictions, kids would be moving much less often from class to class. So there has been some talk about teachers moving and kids staying in the same location for that very reason. But early plans are looking at having on days and homeschool days. Like I said, hopefully we will not get to that. There's another question about that. Oh, good question about are we, actually, let me get here. Oh, speaking of refunds, we did get, folks, if you had paid in advance for Preschool Kids Club and Disney, All those refunds were mailed out yesterday, so the stuff through the school you should be getting there. Will there be library Wednesdays this summer? We're hopeful that we can support a library program this summer. What we'd prefer to do is to have our summer library back, which is when folks can come into the library, do story time, get checked out. That would be our preference. If we can't, we'd look to see if we could do something similar to what we're doing now to put books in the hands of kids and maybe do something more on the virtual side. I think I've hit the questions that have come down through the chat so far. Does anybody have any other questions or things that they would want me to talk about? Lunch money refunds. Yes, typically what happens with lunch money is lunch money typically will roll from one year over to the next. So if you had money in a lunch account, it typically just rolls from one year to the next. If you have a student that is not rolling from one year to the next, let us know. Typically, if it's a larger amount, we provide refunds, and if it's a few bucks, we ask if you just want to donate it. It's usually how we handle those. So if you do have any other monies that you're looking for refunds, contact me, or Rhonda Brown would be the one that will help you with that. Is there a date when the decision of schooling needs to be made? And I'm assuming that as far as starting school for next year. And so I'll go off on that. If I'm wrong, let me know. But basically, we have a big advantage, in my opinion, in that there are schools in San Diego that work more on year-round tracks. And their school, a lot of the schools down South Bay, start up July 20th. And so they are about a month ahead of us. And so I think what's going to be helpful for us is that will help shape some of our decisions moving forward as far as what they do or do not do to keep kids safe. And I think that's going to help us. My feeling, though, is you guys will know typically the very beginning of August is when we really ramp up with our communications as far as what school is going to be. And I would see it being no later than that. But my plans for this is, as things develop, is to continue communicating with you and let you know what we know and where we are as far as our status of everything. That's a good question. There was a question in there about how can you help admin and teachers during this crazy year? You guys have been doing an amazing job on the parent side. And I know this from being at San Pasqual for a long time and being in leadership for a long time, we ask a whole lot of our parents. We ask them as our volunteers. We continually ask you for money. We ask you to come in and support your kids in their learning. In all this time, we've never asked you to do as much as we've asked you to do this year. We've basically taken kids for almost we get to the end of the school year, almost an entire trimester, sent them home and told them that we want to educate them as well as we would here. So what I would say to that question is I would say thank you for what you've been doing so far. The thing that I think has really worked well is our teachers have overtly made the efforts to reach out and provide a program to provide continuing learning for your kids. And you guys have given us feedback as to what's working and what's not and the things that you need. And it's that collaboration between the two that has made San Pasqual special for a long time. A lot of people come to school because we've got great programs here. And a lot of those programs are built either through the funding or through the direct efforts of our families. And I think it was that relationship that we had that allowed this to be as successful as it is. Because the request on its face is unreasonable for us to send kids home to you and to say, okay, now the learning's going to happen at home, go ahead and do it, when your life has been turned upside down, when your jobs have continued to go on, or there's been other strife in the home. And so all I can say to that question is continue to do what you're doing. We really appreciate the support. We really appreciate the communication. We really appreciate the feedback. The challenge that we have when kids are not in front of us is it's really hard to tell how it's going for them. And so continue to let us know how it's going for them. And as we get to the end of this school year, at least the end of the scheduled school year, continue to let us know what's working, because as we put all our plans in place for next year, it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. And it's going to be potentially a movable goal The challenge for this is we're making these contingency plans for what we think school is going to start to be like. And we're hopeful that all kids are there and all kids will stay there. But there will be potentially some need for flexibility if those goalposts change. Like I said, your kids are best served here at school. We've got great teachers to do that. But in the meantime, we really appreciate the support that you guys have continued to provide for us. Like I said, we've never asked more of you and you guys have never stepped up more. So I really appreciate everything that you guys have done. Are there any other questions? I don't see any more in the chat. Feel free to unmute you if you have any questions that could be that you'd like to discuss. All right, so let us know if things come out. Last point I wanted, we do have about 200, I think it's 240 devices, school devices out to families right now. 100 of them came out of the generosity of the foundation. We have a small number of families that were unable to connect through the internet, and we've got some hotspots we believe will be coming in next week. So let us know if technology becomes a challenge for you. We still have more devices that we can deploy. But thank you guys very much. It's good to see you. I will give you some notice about next meeting. Like I said, if you're planning on joining us, probably be this same time, 9:30, but Friday next week instead of Thursdays. All right, and I I got the feedback that my school internet is much better than my home internet, so I will continue to broadcast from here. So I'm glad this worked out. Like I said, we'll throw this up on YouTube. If you think of any questions that you have, feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to answer those for you. Thank you again for all that you're doing. We really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next week.